They get all their publics from the Midwest. They don't use Utah because they don't have the selection.
Okay.
People want to go into a store and say,
I want this, I want this.
25 different breeds of exactly 8 different varieties.
All right. It is 7 o'clock. We're going to start our meeting.
Something I never really. Nice to meet you.
Okay. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to our September 16th, 2021 City Council meeting. And we're glad this evening to have some residents and some scouts in the audience. So that is exciting. We are going to start with an opening provided to us by Councilmember Tammy Tran.
Okay, I'm going to say a prayer. Our dear Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for the opportunity we have to serve our community here in Kaysville. We ask you to please bless us, that we will lead by example and with wisdom and with compassion. We are grateful for the opportunity we have to live in this country and to enjoy the freedoms which we have under our Constitution. We are grateful for the opportunity to come together as a community, and we ask you to please bless us with peace and safety in our city. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I'm going to turn the time over for the pledge to be led by our scouts. Come on up, guys.
Can you come to the podium?
Yeah.
Come up, podium to the mic there, so be heard.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right, this evening, we want to recognize our public power by reading a proclamation recognizing Public Power Week, October 3rd through the 9th, a week-long celebration of Kaysville City Power and Light's year-round service to Kaysville City. Whereas Kaysville City places a high value on being able to operate a community-owned, not-for-profit electric utility and have a direct say in the utility operations and policies. Whereas Kaysville City Power and Light provides our homes, businesses, schools, and social service with and local government agencies with a reliable, efficient, and safe electricity employing sound business practices designed to ensure the best possible service at not-for-profit set rates. Whereas Kaysville City Power and Light is valuable community asset that contributes to the well-being of local citizens through energy efficiency, customer service, environmental protection, economic development, and safety awareness. Whereas Kaysville City Power and Light is a dependable and trustworthy institution whose local operation provides many customer protections and continues to make our community a better place to live and work and contributes to protecting the global environment. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Kaysville City Power and Light will continue to work to bring low-cost, safe, reliable electricity to community homes and businesses, just as it has since 1908, the year when the utility was created to serve all citizens of Kaysville City. And be it further resolved that I, Katie Witt, Kaysville City Mayor, along with the Kaysville City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of October 3rd through the 9th, 2021, be designated as Public Power Week to recognize the people behind public power at Kaysville Power and Light for their contributions to the community and to educate customer owners, policymakers, and employees on the benefits of public power. Be it further resolved that our community joins hands with more than 2,000 public power systems in the United States in this celebration of public power, which puts our residents, businesses, and the community before profits. So thank you. And I think I will present this to our liaison to power, Councilmember Lords. Let's come down and I'll present this. And Nick, can you take a picture? Gary is retiring tomorrow, and this is your gift.
He didn't want to come on his last night of employment?
I'll be in it, Kay?
Photobomb it.
We'll blow that up. Awesome. But I do want to say truly that I know that we appreciate Kaysville Power and Light, especially when there's been a windstorm. But I do want to give a shout out to them and all that they do for us year round. And it is a very reliable system. So we are grateful for everything that they do to make sure that things go on the way that they are meant to. All right. Okay, now we are going to go on to Kaysville City General Plan presentation. Lyle?
Just a very brief introduction and teaser. So Landmark Design here is a consultant that has been leading the charge on this general plan process. I believe Sam Taylor is going to present that tonight. Mark Vlasic with the firm is also here this evening. I didn't hand them out yet, but so they're going to go give an overview of what that's been put together so far and kind of talk about what's next with it. Before you leave tonight, I have printouts for each one of you, so don't escape without me finding you to give you a copy so you can mark it up and make comments or learn about it. So with that, I'll just turn the time over to Sam and let him share what he's prepared.
Thank you. Sam?
Thank you, Lyle, and thank you, Council, for having us here tonight. So I'm excited about this. The planning consultant team has been hard at work over the last, a little over a year now, putting together a new general plan update for the city of Kaysville. And your current plan is about 10 pages long, and the new volume that we've put together in draft form is over 200. So there's a lot to expand on, and there's a lot of content in it. And what I hope to go through with you tonight is where we've been through this process and how we've arrived to this point and where we're headed from here. So just a recap of what we've been through in this planning process. This graphic here shows essentially the process with getting through to the final product of the general plan. We began in all of this by reaching out to the community through different methods of public engagement. We had an advisory committee composed of members of the City Council, Planning Commission, city staff, as well as members of the community to help guide our efforts. And so we were focused on what was important, and we were hearing what the public had to say, and they helped us to digest that information as it came in. We had a webpage and some presence on social media, but most importantly, the three pieces of this that we've solicited the public for their input on came through the public scoping meeting, the public workshop, and a statistically valid survey. We began with the public scoping meeting, which took place in an online format due to the pandemic. And people were able to visit a website and leave comments on a map of Kaysville of things that they wanted to see differently, and that's what this heat map in the upper left represents. And so we were able to collect just a lot of feedback from the public, just in general about their feelings about what they'd like to see differently in the community. We then took that feedback in general, and we tried to focus in on what we were hearing and develop a set of guiding principles, which we then used to develop alternatives for how the city might take shape over time, which we then took to a public workshop. This also took place online due to the pandemic, but people were able to visit a website, review the information, and leave comments, and also take a questionnaire at the end that gave us some valuable feedback as to what their thoughts were on the different concepts that were presented. We didn't receive as strong of a turnout for the public workshop as we had for the public scoping meeting. And so under the recommendation of the advisory committee and the planning commission, we partnered with the Parks Department, since they wanted to develop a more detailed parks plan, to conduct a community survey through Y2 Analytics that would be statistically valid and really get the full representation of the community. So through that survey, which I believe you've been done before, we were able to answer questions that we still had remaining from the public workshop. We were able to confirm a lot of the ideas that we had from the public workshop, and we actually found a lot of similar trends, which was very helpful. But we were able to get a little bit more detail through that survey as well, to flesh out areas that were a little bit gray still. So all that came together and led us into the development of the draft plan. But in order to develop the draft plan, we had to strike a vision for how does Kaysville evolve over the next 10, 20, 30 years. And so from the public process, some of the feedback that we received was really about, ask the public, how would you like to see future development occur within Kaysville? There's obviously going to be growth down the road. Where should that occur, and in what form? So we asked the public in a statistically valid survey which area, we give them 4 different areas. Area A being concentrated in downtown and along North Main Street. Area B being the industrial business park areas on the west side of I-15 around Barnes Park. Area C being sort of scattered neighborhood centers throughout the city. And Area D being undeveloped land in West Kaysville that still remains. We asked the public which of these areas would you like to see growth and development or redevelopment occur most. And there was pretty overwhelming amount of evidence for Main Street area, particularly North Main Street, and also a strong interest in the industrial/business park area on the west side of I-15, so areas A and B. When asked what sort of redevelopment would people like to see if these areas were to redevelop, there was a lot of interest in low-rise mixed use, retail shopping, and restaurants. So really keeping things at a small scale, something that actually fits within Kaysville's character and doesn't get too urban, and also gives people an opportunity to have a reason to come downtown and to spend their time and to hang out. People especially expressed their desire for restaurants. That was a common comment we received again and again through the whole public engagement process. So I think people are eager for a variety beyond Orlando's, which is awesome, but we need more of it.
We love Orlando's.
So taking that feedback, we focused in on those 2 areas, areas A and B, and we developed a couple of different concepts of how land use might change in these areas with the introduction of mixed use, the introduction of residential into some of these existing commercial or light industrial areas. And we developed a couple of concepts which we then shared with the Planning Commission, and ultimately we hybridized these. There was concept A here, but also concept B. I won't get into the details of these, but essentially they both introduce residential and mixed use land uses into the North Main Street area, not really into the historic Main Street area, because we heard from people that they like it the way it is. But also around the Barnes Park neighborhood as well, with Barnes Park really being an opportunity as a great community center for that side if that was to become more of a mixed neighborhood. So those concepts then, we also, beyond just looking at downtown, we looked at land use in general throughout the city. We anticipate that any remaining undeveloped land on the west of I-15 West Kaysville will either remain as open space or go to single-family neighborhoods. And that the West Davis corridor coming along, but the exits for that highway are likely opportunities for some small commercial scale development, but largely West Kaysville will remain as single-family neighborhoods. We've also, our transportation consultant has been examining your transportation grid, and looking at various corridors through the city and what is principal is needing improvement through the city. Where are there opportunities for transit? Where are there opportunities for more walking and biking through Kaysville and making connections, particularly across the freeway, since that's such a barrier to get across right now. And we've also been examining the park system and what sort of distribution that each park plays throughout the city and who has access to parks and which neighborhoods do not. All of these coalesce into what we're calling the placemaking plan, which is a conceptual outline for the future of where Kaysville can focus its efforts for bettering the city over the next 20 years. So that becomes sort of the centerpiece of what the draft plan of the general plan gets at, is this, all these layers stacking on top of each other to become the new vision for Kaysville. So I'm going to go through the draft plan and what the contents are of this document. As Lyle said, you'll each receive a copy here tonight. And so under that cover, there are 6 chapters and some appendices. So the chapter 1 is really an introduction and background. It covers how to navigate the plan and its purpose as a document. It addresses a brief history of Kaysville and your demographics and where you've come from historically and where you might head. And it then addresses the community engagement process and how we settled on the vision and guiding principles, which are a series of statements that basically shaped how we viewed these concepts and generated the placemaking plan. Chapter 2 is about the placemaking plan. So it begins with an overview of what that even means, placemaking. Talks about the plan at large, but then it also addresses the layers that go into that. So it addresses the land use in detail, the transportation element. It addresses the city center as a concept, and also additional elements that help make improve the quality of life within the city. Chapter 3 examines housing neighborhoods. So this is where affordable housing is really the crux of this chapter. Our housing and economic consultant, LYRB, did an analysis on your city, and this is contained within this chapter.
Sam, I'm going to cut in just really brief. I apologize. We just got a note from our IT to take a 30-second pause. They're fixing some audio on the online streaming, so make it as awkward as possible for the presentation.
Now's when you say anything you don't want recorded, off the record.
Off the record, 30 seconds, go.
It wouldn't be one of our recent council meetings without.
Yes.
I still take this opportunity to make fun of John.
That's what we should do.
We should FaceTime him.
I'll throw out that something that has come up in recent days that I haven't heard all the presentation, but water to integrate. Is this in here? Do we touch on? Okay, Yay, good job. So, all right.
Well, there's the detail you want to see.
All right, yeah, absolutely.
But we do touch on it.
Like where, what, yes. I'll just wait. I can't wait. I think has it been 30 seconds yet?
They said they're not ready yet.
Not ready yet.
Wow. This is rare.
Okay.
This is rare. Something wrong with the microphone.
I'll stop it.
And it was going so well.
If you have not been to our city council meetings since we moved in, we have had issues with these microphones since day one. So, oh, great. That's wonderful. Thank
This would be
you.
a perfect time for one of those scout cheers. Don't you
I
guys
was
practice
thinking the
those all the
same
time? The watermelon, or what's the round one? Come on. We'll record you and put you on our website. It's a cub thing. Oh, sorry. I'm new to the scouting
We
world.
gotta have some of the scout claps and that.
Yeah.
Clap or, no?
Corny jokes.
I'm sure there's a merit badge for that. Performing at city council.
Good try.
I like her. She's awesome. Yeah. She's awesome. Yeah. All right.
What are you doing? Oh, I'm just jumping on this train tracks. Shouting 21. Want to join me? 21! 21! 21! 21! 21! 21! 21! Just go. Just go. 22.
I think Boy Scout or the scouting program has improved. Look at that. That was awesome. Good leadership.
Right.
Give her a badge. Extra badge. She's awesome.
All right.
Should we ask?
I was just going to point out that this is both indicative of our microphone system here, but doing a process like this during the pandemic, so there's been
Lots of
all
challenges.
the way to the finish. We're hoping it goes smooth from here out.
Right, lots of challenges. And this has been going, we've been working on this for essentially 4 years, because we started off with our strategic plan that teed things up to kick off rework on the general plan. So it's government. This is what we do. We go slow and steady wins the race. So, yeah. Yeah, whoever's left.
Should I go back and ask Lyle? Have you heard? Are they?
And I do want to
Yeah. Back here.
make a shout out to our IT department who have been really working on this issue for a year. It's been a year. Yeah, I believe we moved into this building, wasn't it September? Yeah, it's been a year.
They came in, MHD, and did the walkthrough Wednesday, which is the yearly walkthrough, which is
Yeah.
specialist.
So we had an open house after we first moved in, but again, it was pandemic, COVID times. And, but it's been fun to have all the space that we need. It was fortuitous that we added the space that we needed so that we actually have conference rooms that we can do Zoom meetings for and everything. Oh, good. All right.
So we're just playing musical chairs. She's going to finish it.
Okay, wonderful.
Now the hot seat.
Yeah.
Feel the power.
Yeah.
All right. So chapter 3 is about, as I said, housing in neighborhoods. The core of this chapter is about affordable housing and how affordable housing could be implemented within Kaysville, but also looking at neighborhoods as a whole and other things that can be done to enhance and protect single-family neighborhoods within Kaysville through time. Chapter 4 is the green and active systems. So this covers natural resources, which is where water conservation is addressed, as well as other things about the natural environment within Kaysville, but also addresses parks, open space, recreation, and trails. So this is a very fun chapter. There's quite a detailed analysis was done of the parks and trail system, and projections into the future of how much acreage will be needed to meet the population's needs, but also to make sure that there's equal distribution of parks throughout the community and creating parks where there aren't currently parks within walking distance now. Also looking at trails, it builds upon the active transportation plan, which has already been adopted and largely refers to that plan, but adds a few more recommendations to meet the needs for trails within Kaysville and getting around, which was a very big thing that we heard from the public, was the desire for more trails. Chapter 5, Prosperity and Opportunity, is about economic development. And so the economic development consultant conducted both a taxable sales analysis and a market analysis for Kaysville, examining your strengths and weaknesses as a city, and also looking at opportunities for you to further your economic arm and strengthen commerce within Kaysville. And finally, Chapter 6 gets at the goals and policies and implementation measures. So this takes all the meat of the other 5 chapters and breaks it down into a bulleted format to reference for the goals of how to implement this plan through time. So that's the contents of the draft plan. There's also 4 appendices at the back which document the community engagement process and some of the other analysis that was done to that backs up where all the conceptual planning was coming from. And so in total, it's, like I said, it's over 200 pages. So it's a change, but I think there's a lot of really great material in there. The planning team has worked very hard. Where we go from here, between now and trying to get this general plan update adopted, Lyle is going to open up an online comment period on the 22nd, and we're going to run that for looks like 3 weeks. So the public will have access to the plan. They'll be able to review it. They'll be able to leave comments. And in the heart of that period, we're going to conduct an open house event here at City Hall, where folks can come. They can review the plan. We'll have a presentation board format for them to review, and they can ask questions and leave comments at that event. And then the advisory committee will review the draft plan and the results from the open house, make their recommendations for changes, and then it will also go on to the planning commission for their review and a public hearing. Once we receive all that feedback, the planning commission, and make the necessary changes, the planning commission will make their recommendation for the plan, and it will come before you all for your discussion and consideration for adoption. So we are hoping, if all goes well, that by the end of this year you will have a new general plan, which is exciting.
That's really good news.
Okay, wonderful.
So that is what I have. Any
Okay.
questions?
Yeah.
Councilmember Lortz.
So one question, and I know we're not debating and discussing this, but I was interested when we walked through that, with redevelopment and Main Street being important, why didn't we look to try to deepen Main Street's west side commercial district to allow businesses to have a better opportunity in redevelopment to do something? So we basically just the front half of the block.
Historic district here?
Right, and it seems like if we want to redevelop and really give them an opportunity to do something, we'd want to have the back half of the block and signal to people that we'd love to see that redeveloped and to give it a little more depth so they could actually do more and get parking and
Right.
flow and.
I think the biggest challenge with that is we have a historic neighborhood behind it. And so in the interest of preserving history, you know, the more that we allow development into the residential fringe, it impacts the next layer back and the next layer back. And so given that we heard from the public that they were generally happy with historic Main Street and the way it was, that they really just wanted to see parking was the main thing that they're after, and maybe some other just improvements to make it a nicer environment. We kind of backed off from any sort of redevelopment as far as land use is concerned within historic Main Street and turned the attention towards a concurrent effort that's being done with UDOT right now to improve the street corridor itself.
Very
Okay,
good.
thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Barber.
I would just say the online participation, I know we didn't have as much as we were hoping last year when we started. It's kind of in the height of pandemic, and anyway, I'm hoping that we can get more this time, and I would encourage everybody to go interact with it because it worked pretty well. Those who went on had a pretty good experience giving feedback and seeing what others were thinking. So I think we should do everything we can to promote that, and hopefully all these scouts can go tell their parents to get online and interact. It's a great opportunity.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? All right. Really want to say thank you for, I know this has been difficult to manage. We've all learned new skill sets through the past year, and learned how to do things in a different way, and appreciate your flexibility and being willing to make sure that we have that public component that we were really hoping for. I know it's dragged the process out a little bit, but this plan is kind of from the ground up. It's not council down, it's from the citizens up to the council. So I appreciate you making sure that happened. All right. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next we will go to any conflicts of interest. Any conflicts of interest? Nope. All right. Consent items, our consent agenda. Anybody want to make a motion?
I would like to pull item C off.
Okay, would you like to make a motion?
Just,
Move A and B.
Move A and B.
oh, okay. I'll move that we approve consent items A and B.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Blackham, seconded by Councilmember Tran. Any comments? Okay, we'll go to vote. Councilmember Barber.
Aye.
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 Okay, A and B have been passed. Councilmember Blackham, your,
I don't have a lot. The
just
only thing
go
I
ahead.
wanted to say is, it just said under award of bid and resolution authorizing an agreement, wouldn't that be a contract? Aren't we authorizing a contract? And then the one thing I want to make sure that's in that a contract or agreement is that not to exceed
Yes.
the bid.
Yeah.
It is in that stipulation is in the resolution that we would not exceed the bid amount without further action from council.
Okay.
And a contract is just a more formal word for agreement. So if you want to change that, that's fine. It basically means the same thing.
I just think people understand a contract more than they do an agreement. Agreement seems like a handshake. A contract seems like but I don't know. You're the attorney.
yeah. Well, would you like to make a motion?
I think,
Oh, yes,
Yeah, Mayor,
Councilmember
I just
Lortz.
wanted to make a couple comments if I can before we vote on this item. Just to point out, I know that some people that are not familiar with what this is about may kind of have some questions, especially when they see the bids and they see that one bid is substantially lower than the other bids and why that may seem odd. We are right now in a very unique opportunity and time where we have a vendor that is deploying a private fiber optic network within Kaysville. And by doing this RFP at that same time, we can leverage their deployment of fiber to extend the city's fiber at the same time at a much reduced cost. And so that's why the one bid is substantially below the others. So it's a unique situation in which we can take advantage of this. And I'm very excited that we're able to use our rescue plan funds from the federal government to be able to enhance the city's connectivity to all of our utility infrastructure so that we can better manage those utilities on behalf of our residents. So it may look odd, but it's a really great opportunity and a good thing.
Andre, will you also just clarify that this is different than a fiber to the home project?
Yeah, so this does not provide any internet service or connectivity to individual residents' homes. This is only to extend the city's fiber ring that supports city infrastructure. But the winning bidder is providing a fiber to the home network privately funded by them at the same time. So the citizens will have the opportunity to get fiber internet, but not through Kaysville City, through a private enterprise.
Okay, very good. All right. Did we have a motion yet?
No,
Okay.
just an introduction.
I'll make a motion that we approve consent item C, an award of bid and resolution authorizing an agreement with Connext for the 2021 Fiber Ring Facility Connection Project.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Lortz, seconded by Councilmember Barber. Any final comments?
Just,
Yes.
Nick, there is a stipulation in there that says not to exceed unless it comes back to the council.
Yes, there is. It
It's
is.
4.
Find it.
Item
I think
4.
it's item 4 on the resolution.
Okay,
Yeah, item 4 says the final agreement shall not exceed the bid price without further action of this council.
okay. All right.
All right, very good. All right, let's go to a vote. Councilmember Blackham?
Aye.
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 Motion is unanimous.
I
Thank
forgot
you.
to make my comment during comment time, but I will say,
Go ahead.
it doesn't change anything, but I just think it's a really great win-win for the city. Thank you, Councilmember Lortz, sorry.
Whatever your
blank
name
there.
is. What's his face?
Yeah, what's his face? Anyway, it's
Yeah.
a huge win for the city. When you look at the dollar amount, if you look at the bids, the difference, it's tons of savings to the city and a huge benefit to everybody. So big thank you.
Yes.
And to all that have worked on it.
And
Shane,
those
Nick.
city revenues are being used for this, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Huge benefit.
And I don't know if everybody understands how much time and effort Councilmember Lortz has put into making sure that the city is well situated when it comes to our broadband capacity as a city. And also a big shout out to our IT department and Ryan Judd for spearheading this and really being the visionary to make sure that Kaysville stays current.
I think it would be good to mention also that these funds are not actually funds that are coming out of our.
let's say that these are the
Yeah.
federal
These are the
American Rescue Plan funds,
yeah,
not
these are
our
our-
revenue.
Yeah.
These are
Set
our
aside
funds.
specifically for
For-
projects
Yeah.
exactly like this.
Yeah.
Worked out really well.
Yes. All right. Okay, now we're moving to action items. A resolution authorizing negotiations with Central Davis Sewer District to acquire necessary right-of-way and finalize any negotiations within set parameters. Shane?
Thanks, Mayor. As you all remember, we discussed this in a work item last council meeting, and things have continued to go well with negotiations with Central Davis. I'm excited to, if this passes tonight, we will be able to take this to them immediately and mention to them that we're ready to finalize something. So this would be the finality of an agreement to essentially exchange services and property in a win-win scenario that we're really excited about. So we're here for questions, and Lyle and Nick have both been very instrumental in putting this together.
Thank you. public comment for this item. Nobody has signed up to speak to this, so we won't have public comment. We'll go on to questions from council. Any questions from council on this? We've been working on it for a while. Nothing. Okay, seeing no questions, I will entertain a motion on this item.
I'll make a motion that we approve action item A, a resolution authorizing negotiations with Central Davis Sewer District to acquire necessary right-of-way and finalize any negotiations within set parameters.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Tran, seconded by Councilmember Lortz. Any comments? Councilmember Lortz.
I just want to again express appreciation to staff for the efforts to do this. Anytime we can collaborate with other public entities in trying to support each other, all of the government entities are always struggling with resource needs, and when we can find a win-win that doesn't have a big cash cost, I think it's a big win for both entities, and very appreciative for the efforts that have gone into this by staff.
Yes, thank you. All right, let's go to a vote. Councilmember Tran.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion is unanimous. All right, now we're moving on to our work items and for our guests. So what we're going to be doing next is we're just going to be talking about things, and we're not going to make any official laws tonight on these things. We're just talking about them and getting some ideas, and then once we get it just how we like it, then we move it to an action item, and then you pass it like we just did that other thing, right? Okay, so first we will talk about a resolution amending Kaysville City Code regarding deleterious objects and structures, and I believe that is Lyle. Oh, no?
That's actually mine.
Ah,
So, although Mr. Gibson and I have been working closely together on this, we noticed recently that we've had a couple of city complaints on code enforcement issues that kind of fall into a gray area in the code as it's currently written. Currently, you can't have garbage or refuse in your yard along with weeds. But garbage and refuse, typically what comes to mind is, empty pop cans or, trash that's fallen out of a garbage can. And really what staff would like to do is maybe expand that a little bit to items that are junky, for lack of a better term, or impairing the aesthetic appeal of the neighborhood. And so what this is, ordinances or resolutions trying to do is it's trying to give a little bit broader definition to what we're going to regulate. We're going to try and regulate building materials that are not in use. If you have burned out car or a engine block that's sat on a driveway for several weeks, leaking oil or something like that, we'd like to be able to regulate that. We're fortunate in Kaysville that we have a really nice city, and we don't have the need for this code very often, but we've found and I don't want to speak too much for Mr. Gibson's department, but I think we've found that in trying to enforce the current ordinance, it's pretty loose, and this will give greater notice both to our code enforcement people, but also to citizens of what they should keep out of their front yard. I note that this is just regulating items that are in the front yard or the side yard that are visible from, normally visible from the street. So if people if they want to take their engine block and put it in the backyard, we have no problem with that. I also talked at length with Dan, as he's our de facto code enforcement officer. He had some concerns about, some people put decorative farm implements. They have a wheelbarrow that they filled with flowers and that, and that's not what we're going after here. There's a lot of subjectivity in this code that we could will empower the code enforcement officer to look at the property and say, hey, that's a wheelbarrow, clearly a decorative wheelbarrow or a decorative antique farm implement that's part of the landscaping feature. And it doesn't have to, sometimes we look at a code and if you're going 71 in a 70, you're you're technically speeding. This code allows for some flexibility as far as enforcing on decorative items.
So discretion.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah. And when I was reading this, I found it oddly specific, burned machinery.
Yeah.
Like,
That was actually one of my questions, just where these examples came from. Is it like taking an inventory of complaints that we've had to the city? Is it looking at similar codes around the state?
It's kind of both. We've implemented some things that we've seen here in the city, but this is also similar to other codes around the state.
Okay.
One of the reasons that we've done that is there's a rule of statutory interpretation that says if you have a list of items that you've specifically listed out, you kind of envision that similar items were
Yeah.
going to be in that list. So, you know, the burned machinery is really helpful for excluding the artistic, farm implement, decorative stuff. This is clearly aimed, and I think anybody that read this and applied those rules of statutory interpretation would realize this is not talking about the old plow that's been put in a flower bed. It's talking about items that are just left and abandoned and misused or obsolete.
Councilmember Trent?
So I have a couple of questions. I've had some people reach out and talk about some yards that have quite a bit of debris within behind their fence. And it has caused problems with rodents, and there's mice and rats running across the street and stuff like that. So I understand this would not apply, right, behind a fence line?
That's correct. If there's a rodent issue, we would likely, and we're happy to, I
Call the
won't
health
speak
department
totally for Mr. Gibson, but we're happy to entertain an ordinance that applies to rodents.
Okay.
That's certainly something we can enforce on. I think Mr. Gibson and I are both a little reluctant to say, you know, if you have an old car that's rusting, if you put it behind your fence in the backyard, fine.
How about-
Now, if it's causing rodents, I think that's a very different issue.
Or like old furniture, old appliances, mattresses, stuff that's just sort of stuck in someone's backyard.
Yeah, I don't
That
think,
could
I
be-
think
that
we
would be a
could,
different type of
regulate it.
ordinance.
We
Okay.
have run into a couple of issues, and I'll let Mr. Gibson speak further if you'd like, but it's hard to enforce on because there's search and seizure issues that we can't
Right,
necessarily be in the backyard. Now, we can be in a neighbor's backyard, and if we can see it from there.
okay.
And then there's the balance. What we're also trying to do here is balance private property
Right.
interests with community health interests. So we're happy to entertain that, and we're happy to, if there's cockroaches and rodents and that kind of stuff, that's
Okay.
certainly something we'd want to enforce on. I think we couldn't do it under this, but we could
Do it
draft
under
something
different-
else.
Okay. When you say includes side yard, so that just means as long as there's no fence, the side yard would count, and that would be the front yard, like an RV pad or something to the side, right?
That's correct, and what we're trying to do there is we're trying to prohibit, I dealt with this largely in Layton when I worked there, and you'd have people that moved, they moved their 44 2x4s from 6 years ago that are rotting away. They moved them, they were savvy enough to read the code and move it
To the side.
exactly to where they could.
Yeah.
And so we just want to be able to say, if we can see it, doesn't matter if it's in the front yard or a side yard, if it's visible from the street, then you can enforce on it.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Other questions or comments on this, suggestions?
I just have a
Councilmember
question.
Barber, yeah.
I'm trying to just lay out the process in my mind. So I'm assuming this is probably going to be a reactionary enforcement, meaning a neighbor calls in and says, hey, there's this problem, it's been going on for so long, can you come work on it? And then code enforcement will look at the area, decide what to do, contact the homeowner, and then I didn't see exactly, I saw that they would get a written request, but what happens if they're like, we don't mind having this old motor refrigerator or mattress or whatever that's been
So-
there forever?
Councilmember Barber, you're exactly right. We're aiming with all of our nuisance codes, for lack of a better term, we're aiming for compliance.
Yeah.
So this is largely complaint driven. And what our code enforcement officers have typically done is they've gone out, they've given a 21-day notice.
Okay.
They check it. If the person's making progress in that 21 days, we don't want to file charges on it. But if at the end of 21 days they haven't made any progress, or, you know, they've made some progress but just not enough, or they've gone 21 days, made progress, but then it stalls, then they'll send it to my office, and if appropriate, we'll file charges. And then under 14.6.6, abatement of nuisance, we don't do this very often, but if necessary, we can get a court order. When I was in Layton, we got court orders to enter people's property. We had Parks and Rec mow their lawn, and then we would assess that in a fine or lien the home.
I hope that doesn't have to happen very often.
That
That's
happened maybe
no fun.
once in the 4 years that I worked for Layton, and we prosecuted probably 20 of these a summer.
Okay.
And so,
So I think my other piece of feedback is that was something, one question that's come up a lot, and I think it does apply as a lot of rental properties where the owner is actually not even present, and things like this could happen without the owner really knowing what's going on. Do we have a way to make sure it goes to the property owner rather than the renter, and who's responsible in that case? You're both
I'll let
racing
Mr.
for an
Gibson
answer.
speak to that.
Do it at the
I
same
think we
time.
did go after that.
And in fact, that, generally speaking, I would say we try to be a very cordial and approachable department in how we handle this, so.
For sure.
A lot of it, we can catch people at their home, talk to them, work through an issue, and get things resolved. When we're not able to contact anybody directly, it is the property owner that gets the information, the notice for violation.
Okay.
In the event that you got a good landlord, they're going to help their tenant take care of things. And if it's not, it's the landlord that we have to go over, so there's a requirement that they be the one on notice, because if we lien a property, if we have to take care of it, that's their taxes, the way that it's going to be resolved long-term. So that's who we're reaching out to primarily,
Okay.
is the property owner.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay, thank you. Any other suggestions or comments on this? Councilmember Lords?
So I kind of started to ask you this earlier, Nick, but we've got in here, obviously, abandoned vehicles, and we've got equipment and junk and burned machinery and that. Would an old boat fit under machinery, equipment, or a vehicle?
I think you could fit that under multiple. There's not necessarily, we're not going to silo them into one or the other. I think it could fit under multiple definitions. Yeah.
So that's the broad discretion, is that when you're seeing if there's an item, it doesn't have to be specifically tied to one of these categories. It can be if it's deemed to be junked,
Yeah.
abandoned, unusable.
Yeah, obsolete equipment is a very broad term that you could look at a variety of things and say, that's a boat, it's a vehicle, it's a piece of commercial equipment, it could be many things.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Very good. All right.
Just to comment
Yes.
that this is a work item, like Mayor said, so if we get feedback from residents between now and our next meeting, we can adjust it before we make this final at the next meeting.
I have one question. So talking about rodents or insect type infestation.
Or let's not
Could this be broadened to include all of that, or would it really have to just be something separate? I was just curious before we.
What I would like to do is, I'd like to explore that, because that's a very good concern. I would like to put it in its own code
Okay.
section, just because when it comes time to charge, if it comes to charging criminally, it's real easy to point to a specific code section. and say,
Okay.
This is what we're going.
Okay, sounds good, thanks.
All right.
But
Very
I'm
good.
happy to explore that, and we'll come back, speak
Okay.
with Mr. Gibson, we'll come back at a future meeting with
Gotcha.
a rodent.
Okay.
All right. I will entertain a motion to move this to an action item.
I'll make a motion that we move the resolution amending the Kaysville City Code regarding deleterious objects and structures to an action item at the next council meeting.
Second?
It's been moved by Councilmember Barber and seconded by Councilmember Lortz. And any comments? Let's go to a vote. Councilmember Lortz.
Aye.
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 Motion is unanimous. Thank you. All right.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Did we work on the ordinance enacting several fire-related fees?
It's been pulled.
Is that just pulled for now, or when is it coming back?
I can speak to that.
Yes, please.
Chief Erickson's actually doing a presentation, or it's Fire Week during the next council meeting.
Oh, yeah.
So we decided to pull that at his request.
Okay.
So that he didn't have to come to me.
I actually did have a resident reach out about that, so I wanted to make sure it was.
It's coming up still.
Just at October, is it the first in
Correct.
October?
The first
Okay,
council meeting in October.
perfect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scouts. Appreciate it. All right, now we're moving on to a resolution enacting a paid parental leave policy for the city. And this was, I just learned not too long ago that Kaysville City does not have a parental leave available to its staff. We do have FMLA, so you will not be fired, but it would be beneficial to allow, to support our families of our staff. So I asked our Human Resources Department to look at this, and Nick really dug into this. Nick, what did you find?
So we have a policy, a proposed policy here that in essence would allow for parents, fathers and mothers, to receive 2 weeks. Now, 2 weeks is just, I think, somewhat the industry norm. The city council could give more or less than that, and we could do that very easily. But that's what this policy proposes, is that the city would provide 2 weeks of paid leave without deducting anything from sick or vacation time for new parents if they adopted a child under 17 or if they had a biological child.
All right, thank you. I believe Councilmember Barber had a question about when it could be used.
Yes, I do have a question on that, but just to back up a little bit, I wanted to say thank you. That's fantastic to be looking at this. And this hits close to home. At my current employer, I petitioned for years to get paid maternity and paternity leave. And it finally came just after I had my last child. So that was a little sad, but I'm so happy for everyone that comes after, because I think it is high time our society has that. I have a lot of thoughts on the duration. I guess I'll just throw it out here, because I will. 2 weeks is better than 0 weeks. And there is FMLA, which people sometimes don't understand, is basically just allowing you for any medical reason to leave your place of employment, and you can't be fired, but you will not be paid, or unless your employer has a different period. So 12 weeks of unpaid work is very difficult. I've done it 4 times. It is really hard to take on to a family. So I'm glad that that is there, and of course they're protected that way. I would love to see 6 weeks of paid leave, personally, minimum for maternity, but I would love to see 6 weeks for maternity and paternity leave. That would be my proposal. And my question is about when they can take the leave, if they can take it up in little bits, like take a week and then return to work, part-time, anything like that. I wasn't quite sure reading the contract. So that's a lot to throw at you, Nick.
No, you're fine. As far as how much or how little the council gives, that's a policy level decision that you guys can debate, and there's certainly arguments on all sides of that. But we're happy to do whatever the council wants to do there. I think that this policy requires that you take the leave within the first 3 months, but it doesn't dictate that you have to take that consecutive 2 weeks in consecutive days or 10 consecutive business days.
I think it does.
It might.
It does. It does actually say that. You can't spread it out. You have to take it all. No. I thought it did say that.
I
sorry.
just saw the request for leave 30 days
But
prior
I thought
to
it
the
said you
post
couldn't,
date.
you couldn't spread it, you couldn't like take 2 days and then come and then 2 days. I thought it said you had to take it, it could be anywhere in that 3 months, but you had to take it all
Yeah,
consecutive.
take it in continuous period of leave and must use all paid paternal leave during the 3-month time frame indicated above. Any unused paid paternal leave will be forfeited at the end of the 3-month time frame.
I
So-
apologize. Where are you at? I'm sorry.
Number 5.
Amount, time frame, and then item 5, number 5.
I think
Yeah.
we could change that.
I was going to say, I'd be okay if we changed that. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to be continuous.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've had several people
yeah.
express that that's, you come home, there's a complication.
Yeah.
You come back to work, you need to go back. That's very understandable.
And also, I think that would be allowing that flexibility.
Yeah.
If somebody wanted to come back, having them there 2 days a week instead of 5 days a week would
Yeah.
be great to taper back on.
Yeah, it makes a nice transition to come
Yeah.
back. Yeah, I think that'd be
Yeah.
great.
I'll just put out that I do support the 6 weeks for birth mothers. I think it's very, very generous to give 6 weeks to fathers or non-birth mothers, I guess I should say. But because I think physical health reasons would dictate that and make that necessary for whichever parent isn't actually giving birth. But I see your point
Yeah.
in that, well, what if you adopt, right?
I would keep 6 weeks for adoption, personally. I think
Yeah.
I
it's,
think the
Agreed.
policy
Yeah.
should be in place no matter how you
Yeah.
obtain a child.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of 6 weeks for sure, but I think that that's too much. For
I do too.
for a city our size, I just don't
I
think
think
we
2
can
weeks, I
afford
mean,
that.
I don't even, we don't, how many times does this happen a year? I mean, that's an unfunded mandate. I don't know how much are we allowed to carry in an unfunded mandate?
I couldn't answer that question. I apologize.
I don't think you want
Another
to
question,
go there.
Would there be a discrimination claim if we had different leaves for different types of births
I
or
would think so.
children?
Yeah, I think
that'd
that, you're certainly on shakier ground there. And I think the cleanest way to avoid that is just say, we have a policy for paid parental leave.
Right.
Doesn't matter who you are. I think you could differentiate between birth and adoption if you wanted to, but I think that it's the
The
cleanest.
maternity, paternity?
Yeah, the cleanest
Yeah,
is to
I
avoid that
wouldn't.
maternity distinction and just to say, this is our leave policy. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, Mayor, I'm hesitant to do 6 weeks. I think, let's ease into this, see how it goes before we jump to, what I would say is a very generous benefit. Although I do see, 2 weeks is very short, especially when you do talk about a birth mother. And I'd be open to making it 3 weeks, because I think that would get a little bit more and certainly provide a good benefit that would be very competitive in the market.
There are lots of studies that show how a provided maternity leave and transition plan back benefits the employer as a whole. You get a healthy, well-adjusted parent, and you're supporting a family environment, and your retention is key, as I think we know. I would love to see fantastic female employees recruited and retained, and so that would be, I can see where we're coming from. I don't think the size of the city should dictate the type of benefits we provide. We want to have fantastic employees that are dedicated and be as competitive as possible.
Can we find out what other cities do? I'd be really interested to know what Davis County does and what other cities do.
Actually, we
in the
do
area.
have some feedback. Our Kim Bosworth, our new HR manager, did some research on this. And it is probably not typical in Davis County at this point. But that doesn't mean that it's the wrong thing to do. I think we would be setting a precedent in some regard to our surrounding cities, and I think that's a positive thing.
think
And
it's
I
really
will
positive.
say that I've reached out to council members and mayors throughout Davis County to let them know, because honestly, I had no idea that we did not offer that.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to make them aware that
They might not
they
either.
might not
Yeah.
be either. And so I would hope that Utah municipalities would start joining the 21st century on this. So,
I have a question. What's our leave policy? Is it a use or lose, or does it accrue and just keep accruing indefinitely? How does that work?
I'm going to
talk about that next.
toss
Are you-
that-
okay.
Well,
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have that policy exactly.
Okay.
My understanding is I think you can accrue up to 240 hours of sick leave, and vacation is uncapped, or is it the opposite?
Opposite's true. So this
Yeah.
would qualify for sick time, and we don't have a cap on sick time. So some people that have been here for a long time, sure, Councilmember Blackham left probably thousands of hours on the table.
2,000 hours.
Holy
Okay.
cow.
So, but we
Didn't
do
get it
cap
done.
the.
You're too healthy.
The leave. And we cap it for the reason that Councilmember Blackham just mentioned, is having that liability on our books is something we want to be aware of. I'm not that concerned about this one because we don't have a lot of pregnancies that happen, or adoptions or anything that happen.
That's what I don't know. I mean, it'd be nice to see a number to it. I mean, you could probably figure out on an average how many in the last 10 years, a year, have we had, and what kind of cost would it be? Because I've always, I mean,
You're also
it's
trying
one
to
thing when you're providing benefits in a private company, but when you're providing benefits in a taxing entity, you have to be very careful with what you're doing with the taxpayers' dollars. And
I have
that's
a
what I
question.
want to be.
You said you had 1,000 hours
I had
approximately?
2,000
Okay,
hours.
2,000. So when you left, you were not,
I
when
got
you retired,
nothing.
you got nothing?
I actually asked if I could get something for it, and I never even got, I never got an answer
So does the city have
back.
any kind of process where people can donate time that
We
they've
do.
accrued?
Mhm.
We do
They
have that?
you can't donate that, you can't just say, I'm leaving, I'm giving you 2,000
Well,
hours.
no, but just, I mean, if you have
When
extra
somebody
time.
has a hardship, we have a policy
hardship
where
program.
we can authorize
Would
it.
it apply to paternal? paternity
I don't know
leave?
if it would. It might.
That might be
I
something
think
we would
that
want
be
to,
interesting. I would like to
look
see
at.
that.
It's usually, though, reserved for employees that have very little, it's like a last-ditch effort. If someone has a terminal illness or something terrible and they've used a lot of their sick time, then employees can donate to that person and keep them, continuing to be paid through a hardship.
I would,
Okay.
yeah.
Could be expanded.
I think so too. I
Councilmember
think
Barber.
that's a great idea. I would say another reason, and when we advocated for this at my current employer, is that the more concise your policy is, the better, because you don't want to be adjusting this when it's needed. When you have an employee who's saying, I need to take this right now, I don't think this is fair, they're gonna come to city council, it's so much, or, in this case, they would. It's just so much better to have a really clean policy, because then you open up to a lot of possible discrimination or anything else, because you're trying to do it based on one employee asking rather than a policy. So the better we can
So
employ
Nick,
this
one other
now.
question on this, can the sick leave in the city be used for post-pregnancy, or does it have to have a doctor's note, or?
I'm trying
Yeah.
to find that policy right now.
And you can answer that later, I mean, don't have to do it
It can be
tonight.
used, and we can require a doctor's note after 3 days, but I think in this situation, we would rarely, if ever, do that. We don't have to require a doctor's note, we can.
Okay.
So I think we still have some bits and pieces that we want to nail down on this. I would support the kind of the compromise of 3 weeks for both and see how it goes, and adjust later as necessary. And then if we could get some idea of how much it is potentially going to cost.
Yeah, we can do an average of the last 10 years or something like that.
All right, that would be great.
It's going to be hard to find.
Just some good data.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right.
I think my recommendation would still be, I hope this isn't in trouble. If it was one or the other, I would still, if I was compromising, I would say 6 weeks for maternity, 2 weeks for paternity would be my recommendation.
Which I would support,
Yeah.
except that there's the issue
that's
of
discriminatory.
discrimination against,
Maternity and paternity?
Yeah.
Lots of people, lots of employers have different.
Well, I think we can have
Yeah.
Nick look at that, and I think maybe we
Yes.
bring
Yeah.
it back again as a work item that we
Yeah.
can kind of go through,
Yeah.
answer some questions, and then,
yeah.
not
Yeah.
have to feel, 'cause I don't know
Pressure.
there's anything imminent that
Yeah.
we need to
There's
worry about
nothing,
this right now.
and that's why now is the best time to
Yeah,
talk about
for sure.
this, because
But
it's
I think
not
if
going
you
to
could answer
benefit
that
anybody
question, Nick,
specific.
then that would help, because I would feel better about
Yeah.
that too, doing a
Yeah.
6-2 if it doesn't create a
Agreed.
conflict.
Agreed.
Happy
Yeah.
to look into that.
Okay. that would
I
be
do think
great.
it's fantastic to be pioneers in terms of just proactively looking at it. But as long as we're doing that, I think we could also look at some creative ways to try to fund it. So that would be
right.
my suggestion.
Okay, thanks. So we'll just move that back to a work item
Yeah.
next time.
That works.
All right, thank you. All right, next we are talking about sick leave and retirement incentive. So Shane?
You guys just kicked this off so well.
I know.
You couldn't have drawn it up any better. As I think all of you know, we've had a little ad hoc committee put together the last year that has tried to address the issues in our city to where we receive feedback that a certain city will provide some kind of wonderful benefit, and it's usually hard to combat these one-off experiences, situations. So what we've tried to do is get a group of employees, representative from all different departments, together to address all these different
Suggestions,
examples. And
yeah.
yes, and so I think we've done a lot of good work. We've instigated some policies that we could do administratively. We've brought some things to you over the last year as well. The one, I think the one that's really just been hanging out there is this sick time. And so I think everyone here that's currently an employee knows that they come with certain benefits, and one of those is sick time. It's kind of an insurance policy. It's there for you when you need it, but when you retire or you leave the organization, you lose it. And if you want to make an argument that that's wrong or right, then I think everybody can do that. But that's where we are today, and that's not uncommon. That's very common. Some people do PTO as opposed to sick and vacation time, and we do vacation and sick. So, but between the people have asked a lot in the different departments. So is there something we can do with sick time? Councilmember Blackham had the same question when he retired. What do I do with these 2,000 hours? Is there something beneficial that can be done with that? So that's one key component of this, and the other one is, as we've been talking about that, we've also had several employees that are seasoned, that are at the end of their career, and some of them have said, I hate to use the word I'm working for health insurance, because that really is a kind of a mischaracterization of what they're doing in our city. They're not just sitting there working. I'm working to make my feed my children and make my house payment. So we're all working for that. But I think that what the point is they would otherwise, if they had health insurance, they would otherwise maybe take the opportunity to retire. And we don't want to lose good people. We don't want to lose people with that level of experience in our city. But we also want to give opportunities to those up and coming, and we want to promote those folks. And we have Gary from our power department is retiring, and I think there's several internal candidates that are interested in that opportunity, and that might be something that happens. So we want to create these opportunities for people to also be promoted when possible. So I guess tonight what I'm asking and what we're asking maybe as the Employee Morale Committee is the council amenable to doing something with sick time to recognize individuals when they retire. Can we do something to augment their health insurance? That's not uncommon. Not every city does it, not every county or school district does it, but many do. Is there something we can do? And we have gone the rounds on how to do this. And I'm not here to tell you that we have a way that we want to do it today. What I'm asking you to do is I want to stop talking about it if it's a non-starter. If the city council's not interested in doing this, let's stop talking about it, and I will present that to the staff and say, we're not doing this anymore. So those who are asking all the time can know that that's not going to happen. If you are amenable to it, I'd like to go back to the drawing board, and I've kind of, between the Employee Morale Committee and Nick, Josh, and Dean, we've kind of, those four have kind of taken an interest in this, and we've kind of wanted to see what we can do. And Josh and Nick have been really good about advocating actually different positions. We won't say who's one and who's the other. You might be able to guess based on their job titles. And then, no offense, Mr. Mills. And then, of course, Dean is very instrumental in putting this together from a financial perspective. Because one of the arguments I'm making in here is that when we lose a council member Blackham, who was such a valued employee for us for so long, and we replace him, we do that at a lesser salary and a lesser cost to the city. And so we lose a lot with that, no doubt about it. But we also encourage people that want to retire and do that in their time frame to do that. So there is a cost savings there from a new employee that we could maybe recognize and reward or incentivize, or whatever the word you want to use, a retiring employee with. So I'll leave that to you for discussion, and of course we're here for questions.
Okay. Councilmember Lortz, then Councilmember Tran.
So Shana, I mean, I'll just tell you, we've in our business worked through, some thoughts about retirement and how, or we've called it planned termination, simply because some people want to leave before retirement age and others after. And certainly I think for the city, there's a huge value in having more time frame to be able to plan forward a transition than to have just 2 weeks notice and all of a sudden you're scrambling to replace someone. And so if you explore this, and I'm open to hearing what the proposal would be, I would say that we need to try to see how it balances the needs of the city. So if there was an extended notice, then that might allow for some other benefit to be given to the employees so that both are getting something of value in that exchange, rather than just providing an extra payout because we like someone. So that would be my kind of encouragement, is that, how is this? I know you talk about, well, the next person promoted is most likely going to be paid less than the current one because of tenure and usually a newer in position person. But I think there's also some value in that the city can receive in exchange for this that helps us in transition from a long-term employee.
Thank you for bringing that up, because that's a huge part of this, is having that time to succession plan and do that. And we hadn't thought of tying the time to a benefit, but we thought of saying a minimum of 3 months or something like that. So we could use
we did ours. It's a minimum 6-month notice and a maximum 60 month notice to plan retirement or termination, and then the company works with them to do what's in their best interest and what's in the company's best interest. So.
Okay, we'd want to do that as well.
Very good. Councilmember Tran?
Councilmember Lortz brought up what I was going to discuss, so it was really good. Appreciate that. I was also going to ask you, so just so I can understand, you're saying allow a higher salaried individual to retire while capturing savings in a replacement. So, well, actually, that wasn't the question. So what you're saying is you've got accrued sick time, right? And then you're saying, how can we put that money back into someone's pocket that potentially would be retiring at some point?
Well, I think I guess there's ways to tie it to sick time, and that's probably the biggest struggle we've had, is knowing, like, do we ask people to have 1,000 hours? Well, what about somebody that has had a serious illness and they've used it all? Do they not benefit with this time? So sometimes we've gotten away from the sick time. But I think what you're referring to is actually the savings I'm talking about is the fact, just the difference in the employee. So I myself wouldn't want to go above, if someone leaves and we hire somebody new, we're going to capture savings for probably as long as they're there, if not 5 to 10 years. But I'm thinking more like, let's use that as a barometer of what the incentive looks like. So the city is in a neutral position as far as financially, that we're not compensating somebody above and beyond. So like a 2-year, that's kind of what we've been thinking, is that maybe there's a 2-year time frame where we could provide health insurance, or we could contribute to an HSA or an HRA, something like that, and use those savings, not exactly, I don't want to say, well, this person made this much money, and this person made this much money, but just a general
Right.
sense of that, capturing that savings over all the employees that we have.
I see, okay, okay. So, right now, we've got sick leave, and then we have vacation.
Right.
So there's not we don't have any, we don't just call it PTO. It's,
Right.
okay. And what's the
Benefit of doing it
benefit?
that
Yeah, I was
way.
going to say, because, I mean, we do PTO just because it's easy, people don't have to, it's just, it's
Say they're
simpler.
sick when they
Right,
really
right.
are on
If they just need a
vacation.
mental health day, or they just
Yeah.
want a break,
Yeah.
so why does the city do that?
I mean, we always have, and again, it's not uncommon. I think I'm trying to remember what the arguments were, because we did talk about this too. We said, should we just go to a PTO and extend the cap of hours you can have? I think the pushback was just that even though, you could have thousands of hours of sick time, it's just such unless you need it, I don't know, do you have any idea like what your PTO cap is? Because a PTO cap would be much easier to get to in the case of a grave illness.
We do a use or lose.
Okay,
And it's-
Ours is
it's annual,
150% cap,
so.
150%.
the annual
Okay.
accrual. Because our whole thing is we don't want you to carry it.
That's
Right,
right.
It's
yeah.
meant to
Right,
be used
correct.
every year.
And that's why the
I
sick time's
think
good, because
that's-
it's not
But-
a liability on our books,
Right.
because it's not going to be used unless it's needed. So that's probably the argument for keeping it.
But Andre, is
that way.
yours just a PTO, or do you have?
Ours is a PTO policy.
See, I think personally, if we're gonna do something really beneficial to the city, I would love to look into that. I just think that's,
So
It's a great way to
When we
go.
converted from sick and
Yeah.
vacation, we did two things. One, we did like a 50% conversion of sick to PTO accrual rate.
yeah.
Put the cap in place, but we also then did a long-term disability policy on employees.
Yeah, we
So
do that
that
as
way
well.
they're covered for anything over 90 days that helps protect them, but it's a very low cost to the employer. And so it's huge value to the employee, little cost to the employer.
I think
It's
a
a great benefit.
policy change like that, and if it's well communicated to employees, I keep referencing all these studies, but there are studies about that. They could say they're more likely to use a day when they really need it, rather
And the
than,
PTO does
yeah.
kind of alleviate I'm leaving so many hours on the
Yeah.
table
Right.
concern, which many people have.
Well, and then we also just did it's 100% cash out when you leave on the PTO, because you otherwise had people play games of, I'm going to go take 2
Yeah.
weeks off, come back and give
Yep.
you notice that I'm leaving,
Right,
or,
right.
not work the last little bit so they could use it up but not really work.
or I'm really sick today and I'm not,
Yeah, that's what we
it's so
do.
nice to get away
It is,
from
as a
that.
management tool too, it's
It really
nice not
is.
to have to care what anybody's
Yeah.
using their time for and
Yeah,
being
exactly.
scrutinizing it that way.
Well,
You're
and
not-
I think it supports mental health as well.
Yeah.
Like, to your point, Michelle, saying
Yeah.
that, statistically, people,
Yeah.
if they're able to recover and
Yeah.
do some self-care, it makes them better employees.
Better
And
employees, yeah.
I believe that as well.
And they don't feel the stigma of taking a day, whatever, so.
Yeah. So.
That'd be a really
I-
cool thing to be part of, is
Yes.
to move, to switch from that older model to this newer model that we all benefit from in our
Yeah.
jobs. And so I think that'd be really, it would take some time, but we have time, so.
So I think I'm hearing general consensus to yes,
Okay.
let's get some ideas together, bring them
Yeah.
back about sick leave. And as far as retirement incentive, I fully support helping people with extended healthcare coverage. If
It would have made a huge difference for me.
I
Yeah.
fully support that.
Because,
I agree.
I wasn't 65, so I couldn't go on Medicare.
Right.
And because of what was available for me for health insurance, I had a drop dead date. I couldn't work one day past that, or it would have taken me out of that insurance completely. And so it would have really helped me out if I could have covered did a COBRA or something or whatever, even a split COBRA or something, was able to do that, it would have really made a big
Right.
difference. And instead, I got nothing. And, and it's hard when you're sitting there watching people who, at the end of the year, have no sick leave left at all.
Yeah.
And, but in my case, my job, was something that I had to have stuff ready for the public every day. If I didn't have it done, then it just was a day later and then a day later, and so I just felt like I couldn't do that.
So Shane, do we
But
have a?
I do want to make sure that you all understand that you get 12 sick days a year in Kaysville City, and if you don't use any of them, they pay you for 4 of them every year at the end of the year. So you need to know that, they do that. And then you can carry over the remaining until you accumulate, so.
You can get them paid out, or you can bank them in.
Or you can bank them as
comp
vacation,
time,
as
yeah.
long as you don't have the 240 hours. But if you have the 240 hours, you have to get paid. That's your only option, so.
And I'm glad people are able to use that. I just,
So, just so you know,
think
there
it's-
is a benefit where they do give you a little bit for it. It just, when you're all done and you see it sitting there and you see people who work the same amount of time and they have nothing. And
Yeah.
So to Councilman Blackham's point, does the city not have a COBRA coverage on
We
healthcare?
do. You
It's
can have
18
COBRA,
months
yes, yeah.
that you provide, okay. And I mean, that's something you can also tie to with that notice thing for retirement, to being able to either exchange them for covering their COBRA for the 18 months or something to do it, because it wouldn't really be much more risk exposure to the city than it otherwise would have been.
You know, and I kind of understood, they couldn't just cash me out but
Right.
it would have been nice if they could have helped monthly
Yeah.
and kept me
For those
going
premiums, they're
that way.
expensive.
And then I could have maybe gone to a part-time situation and stayed here for a while and helped Jeff out for a while, you know, but I couldn't do that the way it was.
Yeah. Well, I think there's general consensus here. Yeah, let's,
We'll go back to the drawing board
Yeah.
with this feedback, and I think we can come back to you with something.
some good ideas,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, that's wonderful.
very cool.
All right, thank you. Okay, so external detached accessory dwelling units, when we talked about internal ADUs, I believe there was a couple of council members who felt like we don't want to drop exterior ADUs, and so that is why it's on the agenda. So we don't have anything new to report, as far as I know. Lyle, do you have anything new?
No, I just saw it on the agenda, so I did put together some.
All of us did
So
that.
I don't really have,
Right.
kind of watch this with the work items, we had specific, Shane was more prepped. I do just have maybe some general thoughts, a couple examples, and then I would look to maybe additional direction from the council, or do we want to pursue one or the other, do we want to wait, or whatever the direction might be. So when I put that down, and this looks specific because this is taken from a little over a year ago, and this was before the council, just to give some ideas of, I think the concerns that were expressed by the council at the last meeting were many, but part of it was because it was so open-ended. So just, even if there is some consideration or merit in maybe considering it, let's not just be carte blanche and go ahead and put it in whatever building can fit in the backyard. But so these just reflected some ideas of a square footage limitation based on either percentage or 800 square foot, some height restrictions, so it's not bigger than the main building. That's maybe just one initial idea we had a while back. We could talk about those types of restrictions if there's interest in pursuing it. What I found maybe is a better, more specific example comes from Salt Lake City and their detached accessory dwelling unit. This is a little handout that they have that shows just some of the rules, and so things that, again, we could consider if we want to continue to pursue something, if there are things you like. So again, regulating the size, height, location of the types of buildings. They do it in relation to alleys and corners differently, so that this kind of gets into some of those details. You can see they're looking at maybe 650 square feet as their suggested size. We came up with 800 a while back as that example. Not taller than the home, or 17 feet, whichever is less. They're very similar throughout the different types. So I'm, again, not being extremely versed in this particular one, won't go into it too greatly, but again, it just shows the types of buildings there are, where it's allowed, and some of the restrictions they've chosen. Some things I thought of interest were dealing with windows and balconies and decks. I think a concern that we've had expressed is kind of a privacy issue when, something maybe pops up in the backyard. Again, height, I think, partially deals with that, but how do you deal with windows, the direction it faces, how close they are and things, so.
So Lyle, can you send this to us?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
To
can share the
review?
link with you, so.
That'd be great.
Yeah, anyway,
Yeah, this
that's
is really
really
good.
about all I
Yeah.
had, Mayor. And I
Yeah.
apologize, this is not a whole lot. I know we did say we'd
Yeah.
discuss it further, and I just thought maybe I'd throw out some general ideas.
That's
Do we-
additional,
Yeah,
that
no, that's
gives
great.
Yeah,
like
that's really good.
a picture to what it could look like. And so anything specific we want to talk about on this, or do we want to?
Only thing I want to say is this is one of those things that's not a fire sale. There's no reason to rush this. This is something that we need to get data, we need to find out, we need to look, we need to talk to other communities, we need to find out what they've done, how they've done it, how it's worked out, what their complaints have been, what the ramifications are to a person who does this, and then their homeowners sue them for it, and they have to tear it all out and redo it. I hate setting people up to get in trouble. I hate that. And I think right now, after talking to our legislators last week, we understand that that affordable housing is one of the top things on their docket. I'm sure they're going to talk about it. The session's only a couple of months away. I'm sure there's going to be some talk and some bills, and just like the internal accessory dwellings units came through, and it's been adopted. We've got an ordinance now, and I think we need to sit back and see what ramifications it has to the neighborhoods and see what we hear. Let's get the feedback. I see no reason to hurry this. This is not a rush item. This is one of those things that directly affects the people in the neighborhood. That directly affects their home. And so it's something that, this is not a fire sale. This is not one of those that we need to hurry and get through. This is something that we need to make sure we do it. If we do it, we do it right. I mean, if you go out and ask people if they're okay with this, and I know you get a bunch of people, I've never gotten one of those. I've never got an email or a phone call from those people yet.
We've had public comment,
But
multiple
I've
public
had,
comments.
but
in these
what I am
meetings.
concerned about is people don't realize what somebody could do next to them, and they just don't understand, they don't know. So we want to make sure if that's the direction we go, that it gets very publicly known out there, that we could completely change the focus of your single-family dwelling neighborhood. And so that's why I say, this is one of those, let's see what the legislature does first. I want to see what they do, because this is like their number one issue, one of their number one issues, and I want to see how they handle it.
To Mike's point, can I comment?
Absolutely.
Okay, Mike, I appreciate everything you're saying, and I agree, we need to be really thoughtful. The only reason that I would say I would really like to continue discussing this is because when the state does come up with legislation, we're going to have to be ready to have comments and to have opinions about what we want and what we don't want to see happen. And you know how fast things come through. So I think it's really important for us to have these discussions, to learn as much as we can, so that we can get in front of it and say, okay, this is not going to work here, and here's why. And we've got actual data and information to share, other than we don't want to do it. So I'm not saying we have to rush to get an ordinance in play here, but I do think that I would really love to continue talking about it as much as we possibly can, especially in preparing for January, because we already know there's over 100 bills in the works to address this type of thing, and I just think it educates us so that when they come back and say, well, what do you think, we actually have an
Something.
educated opinion to share.
Yeah, and we could be valuable voices for municipalities with the state legislature. If we can say, how about not that, but this? And here's what we've been discussing
Here's what we're
as a
concerned about.
council,
We don't want just a big, broad, sweeping
Correct.
bill, which Mike was very familiar with that first bill that came. It was pretty big and broad and sweeping. It went through 4 revisions to get to where it was with just the internal. But I definitely, I would say this is not a fire sale. No one is trying to say, hey, approve this next week. But I think it's neglectful to just let it happen and just be acted upon. Let's just let whatever happens come here. And we already have a lot of that data. Lyle presented it a couple meetings ago. We showed Layton and Farmington and their use. I mean, we can just bring those very same slides back that you had, showed what happened. I've called Layton, I've called Farmington, I've talked to a lot of residents. I feel like the process is already, it's not like that we've never talked about this. That's why I'm saying let's capitalize on the work that we've already done, just like Councilmember Tran said. It's going to happen. It's absolutely going to happen. We have had multiple members of our community coming to council meetings talking about it. I get a lot of phone calls. I think we're only one of the only cities in our county that doesn't have an ordinance for this. I doubt we go another year without having one. I think you're right, we'll have something from the legislature. So let's stay ahead of it. This is a perfect time. We're already updating our plans. We've had a lot of feedback. I think, especially what we saw from our neighboring communities, Lyle can maybe speak to this as well, is that the feedback has been, they're a much less common than I expected even. And probably be really surprising to go around the city and see how many of these we already have. I was at a neighbor's the other day and had this beautiful external building, and they have different people, family, missionaries, all sorts of people living there at different times. And I said, you'd be surprised that that's probably not within a Kaysville City code, and I would love to bring you up to code and support you in doing this the right way.
Yeah. And I think that it's kind of like a train is coming and we can shift the track this way or that way, whatever benefits Kaysville residents the most, you know? So I think that we continue to work on this and, but keep in mind the impact, especially keep in mind the impact that it's going to have on neighbors
Yeah.
and neighborhoods.
Exactly.
I mean, I could go build a gigantic barn in the back of my yard right now, which a lot of people are doing in the city, drive around, and it would have the same impact as some, you know, visually and for a lot of things. And so we can say, yes, here are your ordinances, and let's make sure you do it in a nice way, limit how much traffic you're adding, parking, things like that. I think that's very responsible.
Well, I think then I would suggest that we just get involved with the Utah Leagues of Cities and Towns, and when the legislature gets in session, we get in there and we participate and we voice at that time what we think works for us or what doesn't.
Well, and that's why I'd like to continue the discussion so that we really understand it and we educate ourselves on it.
I mean, especially Lyle will send that from Salt Lake. That was a really good example, and look at and see if there's anything really offensive in there, something that absolutely wouldn't work here.
Right.
I think that's a fine way to go about it.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I appreciate the direction. I think, like I said, I kind of just tossed maybe some talking points, but it sounds like there's maybe a little more interest to start on how it's working elsewhere, and maybe some more specific examples than what ours might look like. And so we could start with that as
That would be
continued data
great.
collection and understanding of the impact, you know, here in Utah, but nationwide. There are a lot of different areas that do these. So
Absolutely.
I think there's some resources that I could bring here as well that may be willing to present and help us understand as well. So that's the direction we'll take to keep working on it.
I think, Lyle, just the one thing I want to reiterate is that for me, a lot of it was what are available restrictions that we can apply that are being applied by other municipalities, so that we don't try to reinvent the wheel, but can kind of see that so we can, as Councilmember Blackham says, try to make sure that we're doing something that we manage it much better than if we don't know what we could do. But I also am worried that we just let the legislature dictate it, and they'll most likely grandfather in what's in place, but they'll mandate what isn't in place.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
I agree. I think we should keep working on it, but I'm not in a rush to say
Right.
it's got to be done here in 30 days, 60 days.
Yeah, I just
Let's
think
keep
this is
working
one
on
of
it.
those
But
you
think
just
about-
sit back and take your time, do it right.
But really, what is a timeline if we wanted to have something in place before we think a bill would be finalized?
I wouldn't want to have anything in place before a bill was finalized. I would want to participate in that,
I think some of
making
us
that
are
bill, getting
maybe
that
of
bill.
different feelings. I'm just asking a question.
But you see, that's where, Nick, can you help me out? An ordinance is an ordinance, but a law is a law. Once a bill turns to a law, whatever that ordinance is, the law, it takes precedence.
Unless they put in the law a grandfather clause.
Yeah, there's, I think typically, I mean, Councilmember Blackham's exactly right. If the state legislature acts, they've preempted our ability to act on this. The league does get a lot of traction on the Hill, though, if they can say, this is what cities are doing on their own accord.
Right.
And to answer Councilmember Barber's question, typically till about May, it would be our timeline when most bills go into effect.
Okay, that's wonderful. All right, yeah, so I think I hear three voices saying carry on, one saying slow down. So I think the consensus on council is to carry on. All right. Okay. Call to the public. Thank you. All right. Rob Danzy, you have 3 minutes.
Do we need to have him use another mic, or is that one working now?
We're going to hope this works.
See if it works.
Yeah,
I don't know. Should I take this off?
sure.
I don't know if, was Councilmember Adams able to report even though he wasn't here today?
No.
Okay, so he was gonna report to the council that as a preservation committee, we met with David Ammett and Preservation Utah. We've established, several architecture firms that have been reached out to in terms of who we can get bids on the building and what it will take to repair it. Really just wanted to report to you guys that, hey, the message was heard, get something done, and letting you know that that's happening. So I know that that was the main goal of Councilmember Adams, but obviously with the horse accident, he wasn't able to be here today as well. So want to let you know we're working on it. We feel like progress has been made. We heard the call, and we certainly want to do our best to live up to our side of the bargain as well. So do you have any questions for me on any of that or what you're seeing there?
After the meeting, it felt to me that the museum committee was expecting me personally to go apply for grants. And my understanding was that they were going to go apply for grants.
I think that the hope for all of us is that we can all work together.
Yeah,
I don't think that it should be one exclusive to any certain organization, right? I think that we're most effective in all forms of government if we're all working together for the same cause. So
yeah,
I don't think it's to our benefit as a preservation committee to go and say, we're gonna try and save the library if the city has no intention of saving the library, right? But if we can all say, hey, we're working on this together, we wanna work on trying to get grants and have the city's backing to do that, it makes it so much easier to do it,
Yeah.
so. And that was a beautiful thing, I mean, a nice thing from, Dave Ammett with Preservation Utah and giving us really some avenues and resources on how we can pursue those. And another element of it is getting, I guess, making us an actual CLG where we can get money from the city and then the federal government actually matches that as well. So that money can be used for things like doing the studies on the buildings, right? Or doing signage around the city for historical areas in the city. So just making the actual Historic Preservation Committee more legitimate is kind of the goal there.
What's a CLG?
That's a good question. That's Dave's big word. It's basically, so I guess in the 1960s, 70s, don't quote me on this, the federal government created a way for, I guess, cities
Certified
and
local
towns-
government.
Yeah, right, to be able to get money from the federal government, to be able to do like preservation projects. So Dave, he works for Preservation Utah, and then from what I understand, there's also a preservation office for the state of Utah as well. The goal of Preservation Utah is to be kind of the rah-rah cheer, help you along the way, and then the preservation aspect or element of the state is to be the ones to actually decide on, all right, here's how things are done and the way they're done. So we're leaning heavily on them to help us make sure we're doing things right and not just floating in the wind, twiddling our thumbs, so.
all right.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And then anything else? Any other questions at all?
Generally speaking, this is your time, and we
Okay.
generally don't answer back. So
Okay, we're
we'll
good.
we'll
Well,
we'll be
I-
in
I
touch.
apo-
Exception.
I
But it's a
apologize.
kinder, friendlier
Friendlier.
night.
Well,
Yes.
the beautiful thing is no one else is here.
Oh,
Hey, there's
Oh.
hardcore residents who sat through the whole thing.
all right.
We appreciate
Very
it.
good. All right, thank you. All right, we'll kind of count that as council member report from Councilmember Adams in lieu of. Yes.
Taylor's, did you guys want to make a comment? Is that what your plan was? Okay. I just didn't want you to be.
Yeah.
Sometimes people wait the whole time for their moment, and then it skips, and we feel bad, so.
Yeah. All right, very good. Okay, council member reports. Councilmember Lortz.
I know that Mr. Scott had mentioned earlier briefly as we were talking about Gary Hatch's retirement. I think I really need to make sure we make a public statement about our appreciation for his leadership within the power department over the past many years, and especially in his efforts to make sure that we have a resilient and good electric grid and a plan of how to keep it really good and viable for our community into the future. So I wish Gary the best in his retirement. Appreciate all his years of service to Kaysville City.
Yes, thank you, well said. Any other reports? Okay, let's see, I'm trying to think if there's anything I need to tell you. I attended a redistricting meeting last Friday. It looks like preliminarily, boundaries will not shift too much in Davis County. They'll remain somewhat static. Let's see, what else can I tell you? I think that's it. That's the main thing. Shane, anything to report?
I don't really have anything tonight, Mayor. I
Okay, very
attended that
good.
water meeting, but I think I mentioned that in my
Yeah.
weekly email, so nothing tonight.
Okay.
Thanks.
Very
Question-
good.
Question,
Yes.
will you follow up on our meeting last week with the legislators? Will
Oh,
you-
yes.
Will you
On the-
follow up on that?
Oh,
Okay.
follow up on
Yes,
what
the
on
bike
your meeting
event.
you had, yes.
Yes,
yeah.
that would be wonderful.
I heard that was really, really well done.
They
so.
were very open to our
Very.
concerns.
They were great.
And some other things have happened with Josh, with staff, and I think they've received a message that, you know, at least that.
The door's cracked?
It's definitely cracked, and that we're not going to just.
I mean, I would love to see that thing go under and able to get over to that parking lot. That would be incredible if they could do that, because there would be so many ways for people to be able to park down there and then get on the bike to commute.
Okay, very good. All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Oh, and remember, it is Q&A with council this Saturday at 10.
Do you know who's supposed to be?
It is Councilmember Lortz and anybody want to volunteer? Okay,
I want to go to Bear Lake tomorrow.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm supposed to be able to be.
Thank you. And
Are you going to be here?
I will be, I'm always here. Thank you very much. Okay.
whoa, I know. Stay up all night reading that.
Well, I look forward to
Are you gonna go tomorrow?
Yes, this is great.
Seriously, this
He
is
doesn't want
awesome.
to party. I'm not going to. I don't. I respect that.
Takes a very long
Fair.
time, but,
I'll go drop this off and
but, oh well.
say thanks.
Yeah, he
And then
specifically
bow
made
out.
it very clear he did not want.
I didn't know until this week that Josh was saying he never eats that food at all. Gary Patch just doesn't eat all day long.
He doesn't?
Yeah.
He's OMAD, although I think he started doing it before OMAD was a thing.
I didn't know that.
One meal a day.
Josh was hilarious. He's like,
I didn't know that.
Okay, well, I mean, if you're doing that,
I guess. Maybe I'll take that up. I'm working on it.